Nobody expected this. What started as a shocking viral video of Jim Jones' mother has now erupted into an all-out family war, and Cameron is right at the center of it. Jim Jones' own son has stepped into the fire, exploding on Cameron with raw emotion, anger, and accusations that nobody saw coming. The streets are buzzing, social media is on fire, and fans are left asking, how deep does this go, and can this feud ever be fixed? Nobody expected this. What started as a shocking viral video of Jim Jones' mother has now erupted into an all-out family war, and Cameron is right at the center of it. Jim Jones' own son has stepped into the fire, exploding on Cameron with raw emotion, anger, and accusations that nobody saw coming. The streets are buzzing, social media is on fire, and fans are left asking, how deep does this go, and can this feud ever be fixed? It all began with a clip that spread like wildfire across Instagram and TikTok. Jim Jones' mother, who has always been a figure of both love and controversy in his career, is captured in a moment that shocked fans. The video showed her speaking candidly about past situations involving Jim Cameron and the Harlem scene that raised them. Some of her words were raw, unfiltered, and emotional, the kind of honesty that cuts deep when it lands in the public eye. She spoke of loyalty, betrayal, and respect, hinting that Cameron hadn't always been the brother he portrayed himself to be. Within hours, blogs reposted the clip. Fans began dissecting every line, pulling apart her tone and the history behind her words. For years, Dipset had been celebrated as a brotherhood, a movement that reshaped hip-hop and stamped Harlem's influence across the world. Jim Jones and Cameron, once inseparable, had already faced ups and downs. But to hear Jim's mother speak out so strongly reignited all those old wounds. The internet lit up with debates. Some sided with Cameron, insisting he had always carried Dipset on his back and given Jim opportunities he wouldn't have had otherwise. Others argued Jim had been loyal to a fault, constantly putting the crew before himself, and if his mother was speaking now, it was because she had watched her son suffer in silence for too long. Either way, the clip stirred emotions that had been buried for years, and the fallout was immediate. But the real shock came when Jim Jones' son entered the conversation. Known for staying relatively quiet compared to the larger-than-life personalities of his father and Cameron, he decided he couldn't stay silent any longer. Taking to social media, he unleashed a passionate rant aimed directly at Cam. His words weren't measured or calculated, they were raw, fueled by pain and frustration. He accused Cameron of disrespecting his grandmother, of betraying the family bond he once shared with Jim, and of exploiting situations that should have stayed private. The video of his outburst quickly went viral. Fans could feel the emotion in his voice, the way his hands shook as he tried to contain his anger, the fire in his eyes as he called out someone who had once been considered family. "You don't disrespect my moms. You don't disrespect my blood. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you did in the past. That's a line you don't cross," he said in the clip that spread like wildfire. For many, it was the moment that turned this from a rap feud into something much deeper, a family war. Reactions poured in instantly. Some fans applauded Jim's son for standing up for his mother and grandmother, praising his loyalty and courage. Others worried that the situation was spiraling out of control, escalating into a generational beef that could never be resolved. "This is bigger than music now," one fan tweeted. "This is about family, and that's a whole different level of pain." Another wrote, "Once the kids get involved, it's no longer just rap. This is blood." Cameron, known for his sharp tongue and ability to clap back at anyone, faced a dilemma. Should he respond to Jim's son, risking the wrath of fans who felt the young man was simply defending his family? Or should he stay silent, letting the storm pass while protecting his own legacy? For someone as outspoken as Cam, silence isn't easy. But this time, the weight of the accusations had him treading carefully. Meanwhile, Jim Jones himself found himself caught in the middle of a storm he didn't start but couldn't ignore. As a rapper, he had always prided himself on loyalty and family values, constantly referencing his Harlem roots and the people who raised him. But now, the people closest to him, his mother and his son, had brought his private frustrations into the public eye. Fans waited to see whether he would defend Cam, stay loyal to the brotherhood they once had, or side with his family, standing firmly with the people who gave him life and blood. The tension was palpable. Harlem streets buzzed with conversations about loyalty, respect, and betrayal. OGs who remembered Dipset's glory days debated whether this was the final nail in the coffin for a crew that had already fractured years ago. Younger fans raised on stories of Dipset's dominance, were left disillusioned, watching their heroes tear each other apart, adding fuel to the fire. More old clips began resurfacing, moments where Jim and Cameron had argued, interviews where Cam downplayed Jim's role in Dipset, and times when Jim admitted he had felt unappreciated. These moments, once brushed aside as minor riffs, now took on new meaning in the wake of the viral video and the explosive response from Jim's son. Fans began connecting the dots, painting a picture of a brotherhood that had been fractured long before the latest scandal. What made the situation even more painful was the history of love between these men. Jim and Cam had once been inseparable. More than just collaborators, they were brothers in every sense. They built an empire together, shaping not just music but culture itself. To see that bond unravel so publicly, with the next generation now pulled into the fight, felt tragic to those who had admired them for decades. It wasn't just about rap beef. It was about the collapse of a family dynamic that once inspired millions. As the backlash grew, Jim's son doubled down. Posting again, he reminded the world that he wasn't speaking as an artist, as a celebrity, or as part of the industry. He was speaking as a son and a grandson, defending the people who mattered most to him. His words struck a chord, resonating with fans who understood that beneath the glitz and glam of hip-hop, real families were hurting. His message was simple: family comes first. And anyone who disrespects that deserves to be called out, no matter who they are. The first chapter of this saga closed with the entire hip-hop community holding its breath. Would Cameron respond, reigniting the feud in full force? Would Jim Jones step in, trying to mediate before the war consumed everything? Or would this family conflict spiral even further, dragging more voices into the chaos? One thing was certain: the battle lines had been drawn, and the world was watching closely. The fallout from Jim Jones' son's explosive rant spread like wildfire. Social media couldn't stop buzzing, blogs churned out headline after headline, and Harlem was in shock. The clip wasn't just another piece of gossip, it was a declaration. It's a challenge, a shot fired in a feud that had roots decades deep. The streets knew the weight of family, and when a son speaks up for his mother and grandmother, that's not clout chasing. That's blood loyalty, and people felt it. But for Cameron, the storm had only just begun. The world waited for him to respond. He had built his reputation on being unapologetically outspoken, a man who never backed down from confrontation. Cam's career thrived on witty comebacks, sharp interviews, and a charisma that could cut down any opponent. Yet this situation was different. This wasn't a rap battle, a diss track, or a public beef with another rapper. This was Jim Jones' son, a young man defending his family, lashing out at someone he once might have called uncle. Cam was caught in an impossible position: clap back and risk looking like a bully, or stay silent and let the world interpret his silence as guilt. Rumors began circulating that Cameron's inner circle was divided on how to handle the situation. Some of his people reportedly urged him to fire back, reminding him that the streets respect strength and that letting a younger voice disrespect him publicly could hurt his image. Others told him to let it go, to rise above, and not get dragged into a messy family feud that could tarnish his legacy. For a man like Cam, silence was foreign, but the stakes had never been higher. While Cam deliberated, fans picked sides. Some accused Jim's son of overstepping, arguing that beefs between grown men should stay between grown men. "It's not his fight," one fan wrote. "Let Jim handle it." Others applauded him for stepping up, saying that family ties demand protection. If someone disrespected my mom's or my grandma, I'd do the same, another posted. The debate raged on, and in the middle of it all, Jim Jones himself remained strangely quiet. That silence was louder than any words. People began speculating that Jim was torn. Caught between the loyalty he still felt toward Cameron, a man who had been like a brother for decades, and the blood loyalty he owed to his son and mother. Jim had always prided himself on being a man of the streets, a man of family, a man who honored loyalty above all else. But now those values clashed, and whichever side he chose would leave scars. Behind closed doors, sources claimed Jim was furious. Furious that the clip of his mother had gone viral. Furious that his son had taken to social media instead of handling things privately. And furious that Cam, once his brother, had allowed things to spiral this far. The weight of years of friend. Resentment suddenly boiled to the surface. This wasn't just about one viral video. It was about everything that had built up since Dipset's glory days. Adding fuel to the fire, old wounds resurfaced. Fans began digging up interviews from years ago where Cam had thrown subtle shade at Jim, questioning his leadership, his loyalty, and his contributions to Dipset. At the time, those comments were brushed off as minor jabs between friends, but now, in the heat of the feud, I think they sounded like foreshadowing of a brotherhood that was always destined to crumble. People began piecing together a narrative. Cam had always seen himself as the leader, while Jim had been forced to fight for respect within his own crew. The internet magnified every detail. Clips of Cameron joking about Jim's mother resurfaced. Moments that had once seemed harmless but now looked like blatant disrespect. Fans replayed them over and over, connecting them to the pain Jim's family was expressing today. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. It wasn't just Jim's son lashing out. It was a younger generation finally voicing the pain that had simmered for years. A pain inherited from watching their father be disrespected by someone who was supposed to be family. The tension escalated when insiders revealed that Jim and Cam hadn't spoken directly since the viral outburst. Calls went unanswered, messages were ignored. Kay and mutual friends found themselves stuck in the middle, trying to prevent the situation from spiraling further. "This ain't just music," one insider said. "This is personal, and once family gets involved, there's no easy way out." Meanwhile, Jim's son doubled down. In another emotional post, he said, "I don't care about your fame, your legacy, or your money. I care about respect. If you disrespect my family, I'm coming for you, period." His words sent shockwaves through the hip-hop world. No longer was he just a kid defending his grandmother. He was now publicly standing against one of Harlem's most iconic figures. Drawing a battle line that couldn't be erased, Cameron finally broke his silence in a cryptic post. Instead of addressing the situation directly, he posted a photo of himself with the caption, "I've been a king too long to argue with peasants." The internet erupted. Some fans saw it as a direct shot at Jim's son, calling him a peasant. Others believed Cam was trying to dismiss the situation without acknowledging it, hoping to maintain his dignity while still asserting dominance. Either way, the post only made things worse. Jim's son quickly responded with another heated video, saying, "Peasant, you wouldn't even be where you at if it wasn't for my pops. Don't play with me. Don't play with my family." The back and forth became more intense, and the possibility of reconciliation seemed to vanish, caught in the middle. Jim faced mounting pressure to make a statement. His silence was beginning to be interpreted as weakness, as if he was unwilling to stand up for his family. Fans demanded to know where he stood. Did he side with his son and mother, or did he still consider Cam his brother? Either way, his reputation as a man of loyalty was on the line. As the feud deepened, Harlem itself became divided. Some older heads in the community pleaded for peace, reminding everyone of Dipset's legacy and the power they once held together. Others egged the drama on, treating it as entertainment, another chapter in the long history of hip-hop beefs. But for those close to the family, this wasn't entertainment, it was heartbreak. What made the situation even more tragic was the history of love between Jim and Cam. They weren't just collaborators. They were brothers who had come up together in the same streets, fought the same battles, and built an empire side by side. To see that bond unravel so publicly, to see it extend to the next generation, felt like the final betrayal. The tension reached a boiling point when rumors surfaced that Kamran might drop a diss track addressing the situation. Fans speculated on whether he would take shots at Jim, his son, or even Jim's mother. The idea of Cam weaponizing music against a family that once considered him blood sent shockwaves through the community. At the same time, whispers suggested Jim himself might be preparing a response, not through music, but through a statement that would make his position clear once and for all. The feud was no longer just about words. It was about legacy, respect, and family loyalty. The world watched as Jim, Cam, and now even Jim's son stood at a crossroads, with the next move destined to define their futures forever. The silence could only last for so long. Jim Jones had reached his breaking point. For days, he had watched the headlines twist the story, fans take sides, and his son go back and forth with Kamran in public. He had kept quiet, weighing every angle, trying to decide whether to preserve the remnants of brotherhood with Cam or stand fully behind his family. But deep down, Jim knew there was only one choice. Blood comes first. When Jim finally spoke, the internet stopped. His statement wasn't a cryptic post, wasn't a half-hearted response, and it wasn't a publicity stunt. It was raw, emotional, and direct. He said, "I've been through a lot with Cam. We built an empire together. We came from nothing together, and I'll never deny the history we share. But I'll say this, when it comes to my son, when it comes to my mother, I'm standing with them every time. Family before anything. Respect before everything." Those words shook the foundation of what little bond remained between Jim and Cam. For years, fans had prayed for a Dipset reunion, for the legendary crew to put their differences aside and reclaim their throne. But in that moment, Jim made it clear there was no going back. Not when his son's pride and his mother's dignity were on the line. Kamran, of course, wasn't going to stay quiet. The man built his career on being bold and unfiltered, and Jim's statement was a direct challenge. In an interview days later, Cam fired back with that trademark Harlem swagger, brushing off the controversy but also throwing gasoline on the fire. "I ain't never disrespected nobody's mother intentionally," he said. "But if people want to twist it, that's on them. I ain't gonna let no little kid talk crazy about me though. Respect goes both ways. I'm not here to play uncle to nobody that don't respect me." That last line sent shockwaves through the community. "Not here to play uncle" was seen as a clear shot at Jim's son, cutting away the last thread of familial respect between them. For Jim's son, who had already been operating on pure emotion, it was all the ammunition he needed to go off again. He took to social media in another fiery video, his voice shaking with anger. "Uncle, you ain't never been no uncle to me. You used my pops, you clowned my grandma, and you got the nerve to act like you the victim. Nah, you're done. You'll never be family again." The feud had now reached a point of no return. It wasn't just Jim and Cam anymore, it was generational. Jim's son wasn't just defending his family, he was rewriting the script, making it clear that he wouldn't carry the same bonds that once tied Dipset together. For him, Cam wasn't an OG to be respected, he was an enemy to be confronted, and the fans. They were split down the middle. Some saw Jim's son as brave, standing up for his family even when it meant going against a Harlem legend. Others accused him of being reckless, of speaking on things he didn't fully understand, and of dragging his father deeper into a feud that was already ugly enough. Social media debates raged day and night, with clips of every statement going viral and old Dipset footage being resurrected as fans tried to trace where the downfall had truly begun. Behind the scenes, whispers started spreading that the feud had already cost both sides opportunities. Promoters allegedly backed out of potential reunion shows. Brands hesitated to associate with the drama, and mutual friends were forced to pick sides. Harlem itself felt divided, some neighborhoods leaning toward Jim and his family, others standing with Cam, who had always been seen as Harlem royalty. The heartbreak in all of this was undeniable. For so long, Dipset had been a symbol of Harlem pride, of unity, of brotherhood. To see that legacy crumble into insults, cryptic posts, and viral rants felt like the end of an era. Older fans remembered the days when Jim and Cam stood shoulder to shoulder, running the streets and dominating the charts. Younger fans only saw the chaos, the bitterness, and the broken bonds. But what cut the deepest was the personal toll. Insiders close to Jim revealed that the feud was wearing heavily on him. As much as he stood by his family, there was a part of him that mourned the loss of Cam. The brotherhood they had shared, the history they had written together. To see his son at war with the man he once called his closest ally was almost too much to bear. Yet Jim knew there was no other way. The line had been drawn. And loyalty demanded he stay on the side of his blood. For Cam, the narrative was just as complicated, though he publicly laughed it off. Those closest to him said he felt betrayed by Jim, allowing his son to speak so freely against him. Cam believed Jim should have stepped in earlier, should have checked the situation privately before it spiraled. In Cam's mind, this wasn't about family loyalty, it was about respect. And once respect was lost, so was everything else. The story took another twist when rumors emerged that Cam's son was considering releasing a diss track aimed directly at Cam. While nothing was confirmed, the mere possibility sent the internet into a frenzy. Could a new generation really step into the booth to take shots at one of Harlem's most iconic rappers? And if he did, how would Cam respond? The thought of this family war spilling over into music was almost too much for fans to process. At the same time, whispers began circulating that other Dipset members were being pulled into the crossfire. Some wanted no part of it, choosing silence over siding with either camp. Others hinted at quiet support for Jim's family, believing that Cam had gone too far. The once mighty Dipset empire now looked fractured beyond repair, each man standing on his own island, surrounded by years of grudges and fresh wounds. And through it all, the clip that started it all, Jim's mother's viral moment, continued to resurface, played and replayed by fans and blogs. It was the spark that had ignited a firestorm. The reminder of how quickly things could spiral when personal lives collided with public platforms. In the end, the feud between Jim Jones, his son, and Cam'ron wasn't just about one clip, one outburst, or one misunderstanding. It was about history, pride, loyalty, and the painful reality that sometimes the bonds we think are unbreakable are the ones that shatter the hardest. Jim Jones had chosen his family. Cam'ron had chosen his pride. And Jim's son had chosen to be the voice of a new generation, unafraid to call out anyone who disrespected the people he loved. The world could only watch as Harlem's most legendary brotherhood turned into its most public war. A cautionary tale of how even family, real or chosen, can become enemies when respect is lost. The question now wasn't whether Jim and Cam could repair things. That chapter was over. The question was how the fallout from this feud would shape their legacies, their families, and the culture they helped build. One thing was certain: the scars of this war would last forever. This isn't just another hip-hop beef. This is family, loyalty, and history unraveling right in front of our eyes. Jim Jones' son stepping into the fire to defend his mother and grandmother wasn't just about clout, it was about respect, pride, and blood. And when Cam'ron clapped back, it showed that even decades of brotherhood can't stop a war once those lines are crossed. But where do you stand? Do you believe Jim's son was right to put Cam on blast, or should he have stayed out of a feud between grown men? Was Jim's statement the honorable move of a father protecting his family, or the final nail in the coffin of Dipset's legacy? And what about Cam? Did he go too far with his response? Or was he just defending his name like any man would? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story isn't just theirs, it belongs to the culture. Hit that like button if you think family comes before everything. Subscribe for more deep dives into the drama shaping hip-hop, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next twist. Trust me, the fallout is only beginning.